screen, babe.
Yeah, and I feel
Good
like I need to be
morning.
taller.
Hello. I have a special guest this morning. I have my husband. Glenn is joining us. If we can both fit in the screen. There we go. It is post-Thanksgiving. I'm not quite awake yet.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right, let's see. I didn't pre-schedule this live, so it's probably going to take everybody a second to jump in. We are at the end of November, Family Court Awareness Month. We just did our big adventure, and we're acclimating into life back at home. So, out of an RV. It was tight quarters for 4 people and 2 poodles.
And 75 miles an hour for 19 days.
I think we went, how many miles? 6,000?
Over 6,000. Yeah,
6,000 miles.
6,200.
It was a lot. It was a big adventure, but it was exciting. Lots of good stuff. So, if anybody has questions for Glenn, you could type them in the comments. But I have the regular questions that have been submitted. I'll go through some of those today. And good morning, Jessica. Meet Glenn. This is Glenn. So some of the questions that came through. Actually, do we have anything else we need to talk about? I don't think so.
That's a tough question.
Not live.
Oh.
Right. Yeah, last week she said, glad it's working. Last week it wasn't working. It just kept buffering.
Oh, yeah.
And then I had to go to Facebook, which worked well. So the first question is, what about my stepchildren? Should I try to get in touch with the biological dad? So my guess is that this is a gentleman submitting this question. It goes on to say he is getting lied to and manipulated. He should have custody. Personally, I stay away from Kansas, Lawrence, Kansas. Good morning, Janet. Personally, I tread very carefully with things like that. We get a lot of questions about, should I reach out to the new feed supply, the new partner, and warn them? That's a big no for me. When it comes to, if you're going through a divorce and you're thinking about reaching out to that first ex about the children, I personally, it really depends on the situation. I always tell people, go pull their divorce file, see what their custody proceedings were like. Gauge if you think this other person is a healthy person. I've seen it go both ways, where it can be really positive to connect with that person, share stories, and show that the other party is the common denominator. But if you're doing it just out of, it's a hard one. But I would first pull the custody file and make sure that you know what you're getting into before you go that route. I have a lot of clients who, really dislike the former partner because you're looking at that person through the lens that has been given to you. And then they reach out to that person, they form a bond, and sometimes I do coaching and consulting calls with both. But then I had somebody recently who reached out to the ex and it ended up being used against her in court. So you have to be really careful with that. Glenn was married prior to us getting together, and we kind of both stayed out of each other's stuff completely. But I mean, this is a different situation because they're now going through a divorce. So I don't know.
Yeah. The only thought I had on it when you're talking about it is that, in healthy relationships, things develop, and I know families where there's amicable relationships between all parties, and those are great, but that's not our world.
Right. Must be nice for some of you, though. Good morning, Pearl from New Zealand. Love it. Glenn got his fingernail painted last night.
I was wondering when we were gonna get to that.
It's our poodle. My 13-year-old daughter gave him a manicure last night. So I keep seeing his thumb. I'm like, what is on your thumb? It's a poodle. Is a trooper. Okay, let's go to the next question. How does one recoup from false alienation claims and regain respect and credibility in the court? Good morning, Dawn from Georgia. Good morning, Jenny. So most know how I feel about that word, but it's Jane Nell. You can't find an avocado in a hardware store. Jane Nell's words of wisdom. If you're going into a hardware store looking for an avocado, you're setting yourself up for disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I use that all the time with clients. So alienation is absolute junk science. Everybody knows how I feel about that. But I faced alienation claims throughout my entire, till the very last day. I think he was on the phone barking about alienation
still
claims.
telling somebody about
He's telling Thanksgiving last night, I'm sure. He had a little too much to drink, and so the alienation stuff is the abuser's go-to accusation when they can't take responsibility for the way their own relationship is with the kids, because they're not capable of that bond. They're not capable of taking accountability for the abuse, any of that. So it's a way to flip the tables. In this situation, were the alienation claims believed? I guess that sounds like what the situation was. Here's the thing with anything in family court, and I have to do my disclaimer, I cannot give you legal advice. I'm not qualified to do that. But with anything where you feel like you've lost credibility in the court, whether it's justified or not, or validated or not, family court, there is this mentality that judges have, that I've personally witnessed, that everybody lies. That's half the problem in family court, that they don't give weight to perjury or, credibility. They should give a lot of weight to credibility. So it's a marathon, is my personal opinion, and you're going to have highs and lows and get knocked down and get back up. And, it's very much the ultra marathon mentality that, maybe you did get knocked down on something. Maybe alienation claims were believed by the court. Sophie from Belgium, good morning. It just keep in mind that there's nothing final in family court. But you do have to work hard to, and that's a lot of times, I think, choosing your battles wisely. I know the first couple of years of my custody battle, if I look back, I did not always choose my battles wisely, because you're kind of in fight or flight mode. You don't understand what you're going through. Back then, I remember Glenn telling me, you're going to go through these stages of divorce, and, this chapter will look like this, and this chapter, and I just kept scratching my head going, when am I going to get to that second chapter? Because if you're dealing with two healthy people, that is the reality. Things play out, things are intense in the beginning, and then they smooth out. But when you're dealing with this type of person, it's not always that way. Pearl says, abusers' claims of alienation fully infected the family court of New Zealand. So I just saw something that someone has been appointed to oversee the New Zealand family courts, and that alienation is going to be a topic, which is really great that they're going, that's where education comes in. The origin of this junk science theory that was created by essentially a dead pedophile, and just spun out of control from there. It's a huge money making movement, and our kids are the ones that are affected by it. So hopefully you can get involved. Hopefully you can help raise awareness, and I'll tell you, one of the things I've learned recently: share media articles. When I was just recently interviewed by a reporter, and one of her things was, if this story gets traction, my bosses are going to let me do more stories like this. So when, the media, they watch every single story, what gets traction, what doesn't. And that's where it's so important to share these stories, comment on these stories, like these stories, whatever you can do. I understand not everyone can speak out, and it can really backfire on you to share your story and to be verbal about what you're going through. But at a minimum, sharing these stories, you don't even have to comment, because when the media sees these are a topic, we're going to see more. And that's really what it's going to take, is the media putting a spotlight on the family court system. So do your part, whatever that looks like for you. I suspect my own attorney doesn't believe me. It's hard because I think attorneys become so calloused to these issues that they just become case numbers. And and they start putting things on a scale, a level of importance in their mind. And it's a really twisted scale when you're being compared to really horrible abuse stories and things like that, where our stuff doesn't rise to the level of concern for them. Maybe it's because they don't feel they can prove it, or, there's a whole bunch of things that come into play. But, you should know that your attorney has your back no matter what. And if you don't, and it's easier said than done because there's financials and everything else that come into play, but um that's your attorney is your voice and your advocate in the courtroom. And if that is a weak link, that's, she lives 3 doors away from us, that's hard too. Geez. You would think she would have a personal connection to your story, just given that you're on her radar every day. But do you have anything you want to share?
Not on that one, other than, in the background, knowing that Tina talks to a wide variety of attorneys on an ongoing basis, and the difference in perspectives and systems and backgrounds, beliefs, that it's as varied as anything else. And so finding the right fit is very important.
And strategy. There's some attorneys who, family law is not the area of law that they love. I mean, the attorneys that work in family law, a lot of times they don't want to be there. They're there, just there to punch the clock every day, and that's kind of the extent of what you get from them. And then there's other attorneys who are incredibly strategic. I just spoke to one in Texas the other day, and he was saying, one of my biggest hurdles is people don't trust me. I need the client to believe in my strategy, and I was trying to explain to him, when you yourself just told me a few minutes ago that 90% of family law attorneys are not as great as they could be, or attorneys in general. There's a high level of narcissism in that profession in general. And so, how do you have to work hard to get your client to trust you, and it's hard. I'll tell you, representing myself for all those years, and then last year having to, even with an attorney that I know and love and trust, to put my case into someone else's hands caused me more anxiety than it did representing myself through a trial. So it's easier said than done, but at the end of the day, if you don't feel like your attorney fully gets it or fully has your back, as long as you're being realistic about that, because, I talk to a lot of people where I'll tell them, I don't have all the answers. Like, you're expecting something from me that no one could go in and solve this problem. And so as long as your expectations are based in reality and you are up to date on the system and the reality that it is a broken institution, it's going to be an individual thing. Dawn says, my ex was able to get primary custody 2 years ago with the help of a custody evaluator. He paid 100% of about $70,000. I see my daughter 35 to 40%, but he still makes extreme parental alienation claims. I'm so sorry. That is just really hard. Jenny says, I think it's hard because attorneys know the law and sometimes we want what we can't get at this point in time. Absolutely. And I sitting in court and watching cases, I get what a lot of attorneys, as long as you've got a good attorney, I see what they're up against. Our expectations about what the court can do or deliver is not always reality based, but I get it because you want to protect your kids and that's what you were designed to do. Whoa. I should not push that button. It's really loud.
Well, one thing I see is there's a thread and a couple of questions that kind of go to timelines, and I think we want things in our timeline. We want it now. We want decisions, and the reality is that time frames, like Tina was saying, get skewed. And I go back to my thumb here. Okay, so our daughter's 13 years old, and the other one's 15, and painting dad's fingernails is something that we should have been doing when they were like 9. And I was thinking about this. If you go 9 to 13, that's about 5 years, and that's about how stunted our father-daughter relationship is, because there were those years where we were waiting for their bio father to step up, and he didn't. So I laugh, and in the back of my mind, can I paint your fingernails? Yes. But you just have to, and it's a small thing, the fingernails versus battling in court. But it just goes to show that the timelines get skewed, and sometimes patience and belief in your truth is what you hold on to.
Yeah. And Dawn's question about the alienation accusations had 2 parts to it. I missed. It says he continues to litigate because he says I'm still able to alienate my daughter. She is constantly begging to be with me or live with me. She is 7. Nature intended for us to be with our young at that age, and younger. And so for primary parent, it's a hard one. For me, if I could go back to day one when I received alienation accusations, my response would have been, I hear what you're saying and I'm reading this word, but I'm Googling it and it doesn't fit with what is happening in our case. Can you give me examples of how you believe I am turning our daughter against you? I'm very supportive of your relationship with her, that type of thing. So, but it sounds like you're quite a ways into this. It's a really, really complex topic. Definitely not one that I can get into here. I do have the online course, Safeguarding Yourself Against Alienation Claims. Even if you are, far into it, as you are, there are still some helpful tips and strategies that you can implement, because that is one of the scariest accusations. The second I hear someone use that word in family court, all hands on deck. That I see people lose custody over alienation claims. Once you say that word, even with it being junk science, somebody plants that seed, that can really take a while to dig out from. But here's an example of where that seed backfires on people. There's a judge that I know of in California who actually teaches other judges about the fact that alienation is junk science. No one else would know that. I know that because I know an attorney who knows this information. But so when I see people in her courtroom trying to convince her that they're being alienated against, she's doing a mental eye roll. I can guarantee it, because she's out there training other judges in California about the reality of this disturbing movement. It doesn't always work in their favor, but there are some judges or other family court professionals who have drank the Kool-Aid, or they're making a lot of money off of this movement. So they'll write down whatever someone tells them. But I would say the online course would be a really good place to start, because so much of this, you have to remember, no matter what topic we're talking about, the court doesn't know you and they don't know the other party. And when you're dealing with anxiety or PTSD, you don't present as well as somebody who thrives off of the spotlight, the attention, the platform of family court. And so it's a very uneven playing field. And presentation is so critical in these situations. All right. How are people responding to Family Court Awareness Month? Let's see, has anyone? Tumbling leaves. I'll try to jump back to that question in a minute. People are responding really well. And for those of you who have been following Family Court Awareness Month, we are very much in our infancy. It was literally an idea that I had in the middle of the night in October. So we pulled this off from concept to execution in about 2 weeks. And huge shout out to Sandy, who helped tremendously. We could not have done this without her. So people are, I ended up doing the speech and the press conference in Little Rock. And then a week later, I heard from one of the domestic violence advocates who gave a speech with me. And she said, hey, can you jump on a Zoom call on Friday? We have a judge and some other DV advocates that would like to hear your story and that type of thing. So, I am now having access through these connections we've made directly to judges, which is huge. And, one of the things we're talking about is our educational packets that Glenn does all of those. So if you have sent an Educate Your Judge packet, Glenn has given up his garage and it is his assembly line for these packets. Jenny, what happened with the guy suing you? I'll talk about that one too. And he's a real prize. The packets, one of the things that I have struggled with, the One Mom's Battle title. When I titled my blog One Mom's Battle, it wasn't because I'm this, pro mom. I'm pro healthy parent. I'm pro healthy, healthy situation for children. I'm pro child. One Mom's Battle has an impression that I'm a mom's rights organization. And so one of the things we're thinking about doing is switching the educational packets under the other umbrella of Family Court Awareness. I'm playing around with different logos because it's not just a month. Yes, November is Family Court Awareness Month, but this is something I want to be talking about all year. And now that I feel like we have our foot in the door with some really fantastic groups and contacts, I think it opens it up even more.
The question went towards, how much traction and how much what's the reaction to all of this, and it's been phenomenal, and it's because it makes so much sense. And Tina talks a lot about the connection and the transition from domestic violence into the court system and the family court system, and how all of these things are interrelated and play together. And so the answer to the question has got phenomenal understanding and recognition of its appropriate place in the system. So yeah.
Yeah. It's exciting. It has given me more hope than anything we've done to date. And the other blessing of family court awareness is that it's bringing together advocates from all over under one, we can all argue day in and day out about why the system is the way it is or what needs to happen to fix it. And everybody has different opinions, but to all come together and be able to say, hey, let's just talk about the fact that almost 800 children are no longer with us, have been murdered. At a minimum, let's start the conversation that we have a problem, and everybody can take it from there. But to bring everybody under the same umbrella, to put this on the radar, because somebody mentioned media won't touch it. You're right. They won't touch individual stories. And a lot of people will come to me and say, hey, I want to go to the media. I hate to say it, but they're just not going to touch it. Some of them actually have policies that they will not touch family court stories. There's too much liability in it. There's he said, she said. I know for myself, sometimes I get behind the scenes on a case and I'll be like, there's more to it than I was told. There are two sides to this story. So, this is a way to get media attention, and in a way that doesn't put them in a liability place or whatnot. Jenny asks, what happened with the guy suing you? So for those who don't know, I was giving a speech in Texas, in Amarillo, Texas, and I'd almost pulled that stop off the agenda because we weren't getting enough traction there with volunteers. We didn't have a place to set up. And in a matter of days, one of my volunteer helpers said, hey, you know what? I'll coordinate Amarillo. I'll take over, and you just show up, give your speech, meet the people, all of that. So we do our thing there, and in the audience there's one particular guy that was making me really uncomfortable, and I went up to Glenn and I said, hey, keep an eye out on that guy. Glenn went and actually stood behind him. Because it was so uncomfortable. And then sure enough, at the end, he approaches me and serves me with papers, a subpoena to be in court tomorrow. When am I supposed to? Monday. I'm just supposed to be in Texas on Monday. Well, that's not possible for a variety of reasons. I have a health condition that I cannot be indoors with people with COVID. We can't afford to travel there. We just traveled across the country and back. So all these things, and I'm like, this is insane. I don't know these people. I did not know their names until I got a subpoena. And he thinks the billboards are about him. He's subpoenaing me for the billboard in Amarillo. And, I was talking to an attorney friend who said, the billboards are about him. Every single billboard in every single state that went up for Family Court Awareness Month, absolutely 100% about him. These are the people we're trying to raise awareness of. This guy is trying to isolate his victim, who I don't know, silence his victim. This is the reason why people hesitate to reach out and get help, because of stuff like this, because of these people that would do something like this. So It's just absurd. I don't know what's going to happen yet. We're waiting to hear back from his attorney. I had to bring in an attorney, but yeah, if you're watching, dude, the billboards are about you. So Glenn's going, stop talking about him.
This could end up as nothing, or we could be at the Court of Appeals in Texas in 4 months. You never know. It's a wild ride.
And we'll start a GoFundMe because I can't afford
Look,
to
dude, she'll make you famous. Trust me. You don't want that.
Right?
Oh, that's how change happens. You face adversity and,
Yeah. Anyway, let's see. Last question we're going to do for the morning is, negative press, it's press. I used to work in PR. It can be expensive press, though. I don't really want to.
Yeah, no, we got more important things to do than wrestle in the mud with some pig in frickin'.
You heard it here first, folks.
Amarillo.
My ex is obsessed with the notion of 50-50. I want more bonding time, but he refuses to divide. Here's the thing. I'm not a huge fan of 50-50 for young children. I'm truly not a fan of 50-50 in any situation because it's like living out of a suitcase. You don't have a home base. You're bouncing back and forth. I will say when Glenn and I met, he and his wife shared 50-50. They settled everything out of court. They never stepped foot in court. They it wasn't easy, but they did it. And their kids, you guys were so flexible. He still had a 14-year-old at home when we met, and he kind of made his own schedule. He bounced back and forth, but he was older. It was a different situation. And there are healthy people who can pull that off and make it happen. And they're child focused. The problem is this situation, it's not about the kids. It's about using the kids as pawns. And in those situations, their intentions are not honorable. If you're sending me a question, I'm going by, he's a narcissist or she's a narcissist, that premise. And so in those situations, do I think a child should be with a narcissist 50% of the time or even 20% of the time? Not really. A lot of times it is motivated by two factors. One is financials, because we all know that if it's set at 50-50, they pay less child support or the finances play out differently. And then number two, the person knows it's the way to hurt you is through the kids. A lot of people will give up the child support to make that happen. You want to be really careful, lean on your attorney if you go that direction, but it can be, you don't want to be seen as bartering money for human life. So it really needs to be handled by an attorney, but I see clients all the time say things like, hey, you know what? Let's set it at 50-50 for financial calculations, but let's use this actual schedule. And, then sometimes that works. Sometimes finances, I know in our situation, finances were the leverage. And that was where we had room to negotiate and protect the girls. But every situation's different. I think we are going to, let me see if there's any other questions. Great. The attorneys I've worked with have remarked that OMB sounds too homegrown or like a mommy group. Yeah, it's, I think OMB, One Mom's Battle, has a absolute purpose. It is, who I am, what I do, all of that. But I agree that for the educational packets and things like that, we may want to move things over into like one of the ideas I'm toying with is family court awareness and education, and keeping it just, hey, let's talk. These are the issues. Here's the research. You know, Joan, you cannot dispute Joan Meyer's research. The George Washington University, the National Family Violence Law Center that she has set up, that is where change is going to happen. And if you are looking for an area, a place to donate to make a difference, put it into Joan's work. You can email me at tina@tinaswidden.com if you want more information on that. There was a study out of the Santa Clara University, and it had to do with divorcing a narcissist and why these situations become so high conflict. So we need research, and that's going to be where change happens. But that's one of the things we're trying to do with the educational packets is, here's the research. You know, you can't dispute this stuff. So all right, everybody, happy Friday. Oh, there's Tracy Malone. Hi, Tracy. Anyway, there is lots of leftovers to be had, hopefully, at your house, too. I cooked for a whole group of people, even though I knew it was just going to be the four of us. Oh, all right. Say happy Thanksgiving
happy
to the
Thanksgiving,
nice people.
everyone.
Bye,
and to all a good night. Yeah.
Or a good morning. All right. Bye, everyone.